Welcome to another edition of BS with Bob Schmidt. I am Bob Schmidt, and this week we're doing a best of, if you will, conversation that I had back in 2015 with Melissa Hellwig, certified sex therapist. And we were talking a little bit about how the biggest sex organ that people have isn't what you think. It's hearing, it's listening, it's being in conversation.
That actually illustrates a huge problem that, when people come into my office and they want to talk about sexual concerns as a couple or as an individual, they're very focused on genitals. How do I make this thing work better? How do I make this thing feel better? And if we get too focused, really with anything in life, on just the function of something, you miss so much. You miss the communication aspect, you miss the connection, you miss the overall need for intimacy that human beings have. So sex is about so much more than just how your genitals work.
Well, speaking of genitals, oftentimes you hear about it's not the size of the ship, it's the motion in the ocean. It's not,
Right.
And you hear about some people having large penises, some people having small penises, large vaginas, whatever.
Sure.
Does the size really matter?
Here's my pat answer that you always roll your eyes at. It depends. I think that it's a joke. People joke about this thing. Size matters. You're too big, you're too small, whatever. It's a way to make fun of people. It's a way to tease people. But really the way that it plays out is up to each individual person. And there's such a variety in preferences. What makes people feel good and what they prefer is as individualized as a fingerprint.
Really?
Yes.
Huh. So will multiple things make multiple people feel good? You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's always possible too.
Okay.
So that sort of age-old question, does size of a penis matter? Some partners, men and women, of male partners will say, yes, it does. I like it this size, this shape, this curve, that curve. Smaller is fine. It doesn't matter. One thing we do know is that penetrative intercourse is satisfying in terms of leading to an orgasm less than 40% of the time for female partners.
What do you mean?
So, that would be an indication that, the size or shape of the penis is irrelevant because most women do not have an orgasm through penetration alone.
Then, okay, what causes... It's going to make it sound like I don't know what I'm talking about, and I don't because I'm a guy. What causes it then?
What causes the orgasm?
Yeah, what causes the
Clitoral
orgasm?
Stimulation.
Okay.
Which is external. Although, some of that is debatable. We think the clitoris has roots. So
So you don't even know.
Well, it does show up, like on scans and
Okay.
MRIs and that sort of thing. We know how, exactly how that feels for each individual is a very subjective thing. So theoretically, the clitoris is an external body part. It's protected by a hood, and the hood retracts, allowing the clitoris to, get more stimulation or sort of come out and play, for lack of a better way to put it. So there's the clitoris, this external body part. Stimulation of the clitoris is what most women need to properly lubricate, but also reach orgasm. But because the clitoris has roots, sometimes the penetration, having something inside the vagina will trigger or stimulate the roots of the clitoris as well. So the way that I put it sometimes, and I've heard experts talk about this too when I've gone to conferences and whatnot, is that you make a clitoris sandwich in a way, that you have external stimulation, manual or otherwise, and then with penetration you're getting the roots. So you're sort of stimulating the entire clitoris with all of that going on. And when I sit down with people and talk about this, their eyes get kind of big and they're like, but you just said it wasn't about the genitals. And of course it's not. You can't have that kind of thing happen with a partner without a lot of communication and trust and figuring it out together.
Wow. I think this is probably the most we've talked about any of this stuff. You know what I mean?
The actual
act of
and anatomy and physiology of things probably ever.
Yeah, in the 2+ years we've been doing this. Is my face red?
No.
Well, I'm surprised because it feels like it is.
It is warm in here again.
Yeah, and maybe it's a conversation.
Could be. Could be.
Melissa Hellwig, certified sex therapist, joining us.
Communication, and you pointed to your ears earlier as the two most important body parts when figuring out how to have sex and good sex. We have to be listening to each other. We have to be brave enough to have the conversation. You have to name the parts. You have to name your needs, not just your physical needs, but your mental and emotional needs, because we know that couples who don't feel connected, at least one person, perhaps both, feels less like being intimate with that other person if their needs overall are not being met.
You talked about communicating and talking about the amount of sex and stuff. What about, the couples that either the woman or the man, they want it a lot more than the other, than their partner's able or willing to have sex? How do you go about not combating that, but how do you go about working on that issue as a family?
Common issue is that one person in a partnership wants sex or other things, more hugs, more kisses, more affection, more talking, whatever it might be. So I don't know that is unique just to intercourse in couples relationships. What's important is that we peel back the layers on that.
Meaning,
what is it that got you to this point? Has it always been? For some couples, it's been from the beginning.
Right.
But a very common story is that couples will come in and they're like, the first 3 years, oh my goodness, we were having sex all the time and we both wanted it and it was, better, it was more adventurous, it was this, it was that. And then over time it slowed down. And because we know that lots of things change over time, it isn't just a desire change. There's this behavior you have that really over time has made me quite angry. That is going to play out in the bedroom.
Meaning, so like you don't put the seat down when you're going to the bathroom. You don't flush. You
whatever.
Don't help out with the dishes.
You drink too much.
Okay. You hang out with your buddies too much. You're doing this, that.
You're not nice to our kids all the time. Right. Lots of things change
but
how we feel about each other. But don't those
things just seem like excuses a lot of times for people that they're finding a reason to push you off?
Sometimes.
Or using sex as a reward more so than anything else?
Sometimes. And typically with a lower desire partner, the one who wants sex less, we wade through a number of excuses. I'm too tired. I'm too busy. And not that those aren't valid things. I mean, fatigue is 95% of the time the reason that people don't want to have sex.
Just too tired?
Just too tired. And we do that to ourselves, frankly, right?
You know what? Start drinking coffee at night.
Or get creative about how and when you might want to have sex.
Well, I was actually just going to ask that as a question because I said drink coffee at night and as a joke. But I thought I read something the other day that said that men are more. How was it worded? It said women want to have sex more early in the morning, men more in the midday, but the peak time is in the afternoon. Or so. I mean, it was something like that, but it was different. Women and men had different quote unquote favorite times for sex, but the peak time is more a mid-afternoon than a late night or a nighttime thing. And
if you take people who work a typical first shift, I mean, this probably wouldn't apply to people who work thirds or seconds, so you take people who work during the day, who have kids, they're getting them to activities, blah, blah, blah. By the time you get home and do homework and have dinner and have baths and get ready for bed, you really have nothing left, and that's legitimate, but it doesn't mean that you're off the hook for sex, because sex is and should be a vital part of a marriage or a relationship.
Right.
So you have to communicate. Here's where the ears come in again. Okay, so 9 o'clock at night doesn't work. It just doesn't work. So do we look at mornings? Do we look at maybe we schedule an afternoon off together? I mean, intentionally put it on the radar, which is something a lot of couples don't do. And over time, people argue about why we're not having enough sex.
And I think that seems to be like my buddies when we're all, we always sit around and BS about stuff.
Right.
It's like, oh yeah, we're not doing it. This didn't happen as much.
Yep.
And then one guy's like, well, yeah, for me it is all the time. And then you're like, yeah, whatever.
Oh, there's always one, right?
There's always, there's always one BSer in a group. That's for sure.
He's probably telling the truth, I would say.
Oh, really?
Sure.
Okay.
There are couples that their desire level happens to match up more closely than it does for the average couple, and they have more sex.
They're the lucky ones.
It is kind of lucky to find a partner
that they match is what I meant.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I wanted to ask, front page of the hometown section today in the newspaper.
Yes.
That read that.
Oh, 3 busted in prostitution sting. I've not seen that yet.
So I've been seeing that a lot more lately. That there's been a lot more quote unquote prostitution sting. There's been a lot more people busted for going out, stepping outside of their marriages and paying for sex. And we've been seeing it not only locally but on a nationwide.
Right.
You know, because of Craigslist, because of the back page, because of things like that.
Right.
Are there people screwing around more now than they used to be? Or are we just hearing about it more?
That is a really good question, and there's actually a fair amount of debate about that because people stepping out on their marriages is absolutely not a new concept. It's been happening through all of history. Mm-hmm. So that is not new. Technology makes it awfully easy. Mm-hmm. So perhaps that, and I'm guessing, has increased the rate of it because it can happen so much easier and in a much more secretive way.
Well, obviously not if there's,
not
three
so
more
secretive.
people busted.
And I think law enforcement is getting on top of it because human trafficking is a huge international problem.
Okay.
So I think it's about safety and taking care of vulnerable people too.
Right. Okay. I mean, because when I saw that, I'm like, oh, that's a good thing that, I mean, not a good thing that it happened, but good thing that I saw it today when I've got you on, on the radio with me today to talk about, when people do that, when people go out and, either find somebody else to, find a lover or go and find a prostitute or step out after going out. I mean, what causes that? What makes somebody get to that point?
It depends, of course.
Right.
It's different for everybody. For some people, they're very lonely. Some people are predators and they're looking for kids, and that's where it becomes a real problem.
Right.
I didn't read the article, but I would be curious to know, were they seeking out peers, people of about the same age to
didn't say. I read the article.
With?
Didn't say that. It just said that they were. Yeah. 2 of the guys would pay $150. One of the guys would pay $100. They're all from Minnesota, and it happened in Winona.
Because not that long ago, there was the case where there were a couple of guys caught soliciting from what they thought was a 15-year-old girl. So I think the issues there are different. You have somebody who is seeking a minor, which is predatory in nature, and then you have people who are seeking sex or companionship, and the reasons behind all of that are, there are many. We don't know.
Right. But what makes somebody get to that point of, I'm going to go and hire a hooker, or I'm going to go and find a girlfriend or a boyfriend or a companion, a sex partner, if you will.
Well, and we don't know, I don't think, that these 3 individuals pictured in the paper were married or not married. So maybe they weren't stepping out. For some people, sex is a very shameful thing. For some people, the element of risk, or I need some kind of risk, or that I'm not supposed to do that. It makes it more exciting or more fun. Some people are incredibly lonely. Some people don't think that they can find a mutual partner. Some people don't want to deal with a relationship. They just want sex, and that is all. I mean, the number of reasons is long.
Melissa, certified sex therapist. Is this mostly what your conversations are at work? I mean, are you talking about the stuff that we're talking about right now?
Sometimes.
Or is it more about the stuff that we've talked about in the past with the listening and the what did you call it when you chore play? Chore
play. Oh, that almost always comes up. But
so I mean, a lot of it's like you're help out a little bit more around the house, have a little bit more sex, kind of thing. Yeah,
I mean, a lot of it has to do with just helping couples understand that we're not just talking about the genitals and how they work. We're talking about your relationship and the quality of it, and your sex life will be somewhat of a reflection of that. But sometimes it is like, I don't know why this doesn't work for me, and then we're talking about more the physiology and. Maybe getting an exam to make sure that something isn't wrong. Maybe physical therapy can help with pelvic floor, either strengthening or relaxing at times. So, it could go either way. It depends upon the issue.
So with orgasms, is that something that everybody can have?
We think so, unless there is perhaps an injury, a condition, some kind of physiological abnormality. So it's possible there is a legitimate barrier that gets in the way of somebody having an orgasm. But really, our bodies are made to be able to experience pleasure. In fact, the clitoris has no other purpose. None.
Zero.
Zero.
Okay.
Yep. So theoretically, yes.
Okay, so everybody can, but not everybody does. Is that
Lots
fair
of
to
people
say?
don't.
Is that fair to say?
That's fair to say, yes.
Okay, so that they are possible.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, do women know when they have them?
It's funny when women come in and they are like, I'm not sure I've had one. Usually it's like, then you probably haven't.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I was trying to do a little bit of research on some questions and stuff to ask you. And, is there certain like zones or certain things that maybe people are missing when it comes to, the best sexual experience?
That you maybe expected me to say it depends, but to that question, I would say probably, because again, when it comes to sex, we are so focused on the genitals, and really our entire body potentially is one giant erogenous zone. And, if you're missing hands and fingers and arms and elbows and knees and toes, different things feel good to different people, and we often don't bother to explore the rest of the body to find out where it feels good for our partners or for ourselves, for that matter.
So that's why a good massage will sometimes be.
Yeah.
So light touch or hard touch?
That depends. Of course.
Is there a pat answer for anything that we talk about?
Yep. The 3 rules of
safe, sane, and
sexuality:
consensual.
safe, sane, and consensual.
See, I do pay attention.
You do. Man, you're a good student.
Well, thank goodness.
Yep.
But so safe, sane, and consensual.
Yeah.
But safe, sane, and consensual can all be different things to different people anyway.
True.
So
true.
so basically, even though that's the quote unquote rules for a good relationship, that might be different for you than it is for me, than it is for those people down the street.
Every single couple, every single person has to define that. What feels safe to me.
Right.
And, you think about somebody, we all come from different histories, and some
Right.
of us in childhood and adolescence are exposed to scary stuff. The number of people that have a trauma history.
Oh, okay.
Just a general trauma history, not necessarily abuse, although that's one of those things. Most of us have something where we feared for our life or safety or somebody else's, or we witnessed something, or were around something really scary. It might have been a one-time thing, might have been over and over and over again. So safety is not just about putting on a condom when it comes to sex, right? That's one way to be safe, but you
Right.
have to be physically safe, emotionally safe, mentally safe, and that depends for each person depending upon their individual story.
What about people that say that they don't, I don't like a condom. I refuse to wear one of those, or I don't like when my partner has one. Because you hear about those things, and I think I read something in the paper or something saying that now in some states to do porn you have they've legislated that you have to wear a condom,
right?
And some people say that they don't like to do that.
A lot of people say that they don't like it, and the reality is, there's a smell, there's a touch, it feels different, so it's not everybody's favorite, but neither is going to work, but we do it anyway because we need to, and it's the right thing.
What if it falls off inside?
Oh, that does happen. Everybody should make sure that they're putting it on correctly. It's not just as simple as open package and put it on. You want to make sure that you leave a little reservoir in the tip so that there is room for the ejaculate. Otherwise, if it's put on too tight or too snugly or rolled all the way up without that reservoir at the tip, you can get spillage over the top and the sides. And then if it is being used for penetrative intercourse, you want to make sure that you grab the top of the condom at the base of the penis before the penis is pulled out of the vagina or the whatever.
Okay, I don't mean to sound stupid asking this. Penetrative sex, isn't that the only time you wear a condom?
No, some people wear it for oral sex too.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
For extra protection, right?
All right. Well,
yeah.
I could hear like crickets in the background now that I asked that question. But you know what I mean? I learned something new every time I talk to you. That's for sure. As we were talking about, you said that everybody, that a lot of people have trauma in their lives and stuff, and it made me think about some of the other guests that I've had and talked to on the air about different sexual traumas that people have had and rapes and things like that.
Yep.
That, like, I think I read or heard that 1 in 4 women and 1 in 6 men have had some sort of a a bad experience, or a rape, or
a sexual assault of some variety
of some sort.
Yes.
Does that play into like the trust factor when it comes to relationships and stuff then too?
Yes. Even if you are with a partner currently who is perfectly safe and respectful and all of that, our bodies hold on to those old memories. Mm-hmm. So, you could be engaging in an intimate way with a new person who is perfectly safe. Your body is going to remember the old stuff, even if you don't want it to, and be triggered by that. And then this is where, what's going on in your brain has a lot to do with your ability to be present and focused with your current partner. So you've been triggered. There's an old memory, there's a thought. We think there are body memories where your body kind of remembers and holds tension, even if it's not a conscious thought. And that can change the course of sex or just an affectionate interaction between people.
You said present and what was the other word that you used?
Focused.
Present and focus. How do you get that presence and focus when you're with somebody?
That too is a little different for everybody, because some people find that incredibly easy, that they can just be in the moment. But, this is a common therapy issue, is that people are not very often in the moment. We're not very mindful people. We're always, as a society, we've sort of been conditioned to dwell on the past and worry about the future. And that can absolutely play out.
Time right there. That's past and future right there, right?
Yep. Absolutely. And we can basically just not be in the moment. We can be thinking about old stuff, worried about what we have left to do, or something as simple as, are the dishes done and are the kids sleeping soundly and all of that. And it takes you out of the moment. When we're out of the moment, we are less likely to enjoy it, first of all, but also less likely to really have it be a meaningful, good experience.
I talked to somebody a long time ago saying that and they said to me that you're never really going to be any more successful than the 5 people that you hang out with the most.
Okay. And
is that kind of the same way when it comes to a relationship? Because I look at like my buddies. My buddies all have good jobs. They all have, I'm probably the guy that's dragging them down a little bit, But when it comes to a friendship relationship, you're kind of on that same level playing field. When it comes to a marriage, especially when you get married when you're 17 or 19 or 25 or whenever it is that you happen to get married, and you're not really sure where you fit in yet.
Right.
Are marriages similar to that as well?
Well, it's interesting. There's been research over the past couple generations about how people partner and how you find your mate and what brings people together. And the general thought is that people tend to match up pretty closely to somebody with similar ambition, somebody with similar looks, somebody with kind of a level playing field with you. And of course, as I say that, I'm thinking of all kinds of situations where that isn't the case. And what's almost more interesting to me than that research or that reality is that people make such a big deal out of situations when that isn't true.
What do you mean? Oh, so like you get like a rock star with a hot model? Or so, what I mean? Is that kind of what you mean?
Yeah. Like there was a whole show, this was many years ago, that I happened to catch. And it was interesting because the show was about really good-looking people partnered with people who weren't, and how that happens. Like, movie stars and famous people who were partnered with just really average-looking people. And why is that such a big deal? Because ideally, we partner with people that we connect with, not just that we're attracted to.
Can I just say this, though? Because, a lot of... Even though anybody can look attractive at a moment.
Sure.
What if, before all the makeup and everything, you look exactly the same.
Yes.
Because people without, you think that, the most gorgeous man in your life, whatever, the
That's my husband.
But you know what I mean? On a bad day, it doesn't look anything like he does when he goes out. Just like the best looking woman in the whole world doesn't look like that when she gets up in the morning.
Sure.
People don't look the way that they go out with.
We can look the way that we want to make ourselves look.
I
There's
agree
some
with
truth
that.
to that. But, the question is still, why do we have such a problem with that? That people are going outside of their playing field, so to speak.
Yeah, I don't know.
I don't know
my
either.
my buddies always tease me. Oh, you married up. You outkicked your coverage and stuff. You know, and whatever. I agree with them. Sometimes.
It works.
You know, and it does. I mean, and how do you know at the onset what will work or what's not going to work?
Well, getting into a relationship in that respect is a giant leap of faith. You know, if you get married, you're theoretically committing to be together till you die. And even people who don't marry make that promise sometimes. Mm-hmm. And we don't know what's going to happen in 10 or 20 or 30 years.
Or 5 minutes from now.
Or 5 minutes. Will you be
honestly,
healthy or
you don't
not?
know.
Or right. So it's a leap of faith. And hopefully all of us have also picked partners that we have an internal connection with. Uh-huh. You know, that intellectual connection and a communication connection. And, you know, you find each other funny, hopefully. So that if the looks don't keep you together, if the common interests, if parenting, whatever, doesn't keep you together, the other stuff does.
So there's still a friendship that's there. There's still
Hopefully.
another kind of a...
Other reasons that you feel attracted to that person.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. And can you be attracted to more than one person?
Yes, you can. And it doesn't mean that you're cheating. It means that you are observing, probably.
Right.
You know, and this gets really dicey with couples in therapy because we would really all love to not ever have our partner look at another person of the opposite sex with any kind of lust or desire. But that's really pretty unrealistic.
Right. Because I think everybody probably does. I mean, everybody's
Sure.
like, oh, look at, wow. You know?
Well, same sex or opposite, whatever your direction of attraction is, we all notice good-looking people. It
Right.
doesn't mean that we want them. It doesn't mean we're going to do anything about that.
But you know, it's funny. You can look at somebody that's super hot and think, oh, that's, and then start talking to them and realize you are just like talking to a wall.
Sure, there's something instantly that makes them unattractive.
And somebody that's, you know, average, plain Jane, whatever, or not even plain Jane, and start talking to them, and they're beautiful.
Yes.
And then all of a sudden, the next time you see them, they look better.
Right.
They're, you know,
Yep.
You know what I mean?
You cannot judge a book by its cover.
No, you really can't.
That old saying is totally true.
I totally agree with
Yep.
that. I mean, there's it's funny to me that people have that different thought process when it comes down to building a relationship or dealing with people or, you know.
Yep. It's interesting stuff.
Very interesting.
Thanks so much for listening to the BS with Bob podcast. Basically, it's just me pulling up the metaphorical bar stool and chatting with everyone from entertainers to educators to business owners to marketing gurus. You know, people who've done cool things, survived weird stuff, and have a good story to tell. Please like, subscribe, and share the podcast.